This insider just dropped a massive report for Winnipeg Jets fans. Ever since the start of the offseason, Kevin Cheveldayoff and the Winnipeg Jets have had their plates pretty full, dealing with new contracts for players like Dylan Samberg and Gabriel Vilardi. But further to that, ever since July 1st, they have had the option and ability to extend current star winger with the Winnipeg Jets, Kyle Connor. This, of course, is going to be the topic of this video, as we have just received some new information as to what kind of number he's going to be looking for on his next contract. We're going to talk about Kyle Connor as a player, why he's so important to this Winnipeg Jets roster, and of course, why this contract could shape the next 10 years of Winnipeg Jets hockey. But before we hop into the video, I couldn't help but notice in the past 28 days, it looks like 85% of people watching the videos here on Jets Digest were not subscribed to the channel. I'd highly suggest you guys throw a subscription. It's the best way to make sure you're staying informed, as we're going to be making videos all throughout the offseason and leading into the next one. So let's hop into the video. Let's, of course, talk about Kyle Connor and the news that we just got about his contract. We can head over to the tweet that I have here. It is from Frank Saravalli on the Bleacher Report. In regards to Kyle Connor, he says this: I would peg that next contract to be somewhere between $11 and $12 million AAV, and obviously this is a huge priority for the Winnipeg Jets to get done. Now, some of you may get a little bit of sticker shock. We've never had a player here making over $9 million in Winnipeg, and seeing a number anywhere between 11 and 12 million might scare you guys away. However, we need to talk about Kyle Connor as a player and why he might actually deserve this much money. We can, of course, go over to his stats from this past season. In 82 games, he scored 41 goals, had 56 assists, which was good enough for 97 points. Those 41 goals were good enough to be 7th in the league in goal scoring. He is, of course, a part of that top line that was been formed with him, Gabriel Vilardi, and of course Mark Scheifele. And at this point, Kyle Connor is around 29 years old. He is an electric player. He scores a lot of goals, one of the best goal scorers in the league. And we can even take a look at his advanced stat profile over here. Let's hop over to it. This is, of course, his J Fresh card. If you're unfamiliar, blue is good, red is bad. If you see a number, that is his percentile in the league. So, for example, his projected WAR, which stands for placement, is 91%, which makes sense considering he is a star player in this league. He generates a lot of offense, even at even strength at 78%. His biggest faults are the fact that he, is not that much of a defensive player, as well as he is not someone who generates a lot of assists for his teammates. The reason he doesn't generate a lot of assists is because he is the finisher. He is the one going ahead and scoring those goals. He ranks 98th. He is in the 98th percentile when it comes to goals, 92nd percentile when it comes to finishing, and he plays against difficult competition. He draws a lot of penalties. This player is a star in this league, so it makes a lot of sense why he'd be looking for an $11 million, $12 million contract. And we can compare that to other players in this league making that amount of money. So let's hop over. I have a list here of the top contracts in the league. It shows the top 15 here. You have players like Leon Draisaitl, Austin Matthews, Nathan McKinnon, the usual top guys in the league. Then you also have players like Mitch Marner, Mikko Rantanen, Artemi Panarin, which I think are better comparisons. William Nylander as well as David Pastrnak, which are better comparisons for Kyle Connor because he is a winger. Obviously, you're going to make a lot more money if you are a centerman. However, when we look at that number, I unfortunately look at a player like Mikko Rantanen as a big comparable. And when I think back to this past season, especially this past playoffs, Mikko Rantanen and Kyle Connor are not the same type of player. The only issue I have with giving Kyle Connor this much money is the fact that he's not a game breaker. We saw with Mikko Rantanen, unfortunately, firsthand, that he is a player who can dominate a game. Many times when the Jets were playing against the Stars, Mikko Rantanen was the biggest factor in that. He was the biggest factor in the comeback in the Stars beating the Avalanche in order to get to the second round to face the Winnipeg Jets. And my only concern with Kyle Connor is that he needs to be playing with someone else who can do some of the work for him. He's the guy who parks the bus, who puts the puck in the back of the net. Unfortunately, he doesn't do the play driving as much, as well as he does not. He just doesn't take over the game the way that some of the players on this list do. However, we are entering a new era in the salary cap. As we can see here, we can take a look at the projections for the next 3 seasons. Right now, it is going to be $95.5 million. This year, it jumps up almost $10 million to 104, and then even further up to just under 114 million. So in general, salaries are going up, so it is not crazy to, for him to be asking for this. And of course, this is potentially just what he's asking for. It could be just, the start of the negotiation. We might end up seeing it coming in closer to a $10 million range. But let's take this at face value. Let's just say the contract he's asking for is $11.5 million. If he were to say, hey, Kevin Cheveldayoff, I will sign this deal immediately if you give me $11.5 million, should the Winnipeg Jets do that? Well, first of all, the Winnipeg Jets consider themselves to have an opportunity to win the cup in the next 3 or so years, while Connor Hellebuyck is still doing really well in the league, while Mark Scheifele is still on the deal that he's on. If they believe that their window is right now, signing Kyle Connor is the smart thing to do, because he's just a very good player, and the team would be very much worse off without him. So that's the biggest key thing. And of course, with the salary cap going up, you can stomach a contract like this a lot better than you maybe would have been able to when what's his name? Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner signed those deals with Toronto. Because we can actually project the cap going up for sure in the next few years. It gives the Jets a lot more room to give a bigger deal to a player like this. And if this is the case, if the Winnipeg Jets truly believe in themselves as being a contender in these next couple years, they need to do everything in their power to be that contender. That means potentially trading away prospects. I know we all love to hold on to our near and dear favorite prospects, but if there's a deal available to acquire a very good player, you need to be okay with giving up prospects, picks, anything that is not servicing this era of the Winnipeg Jets. They need to go in, and it has to be a full measure. If anyone here has watched Breaking Bad, they know the quote, no more half measures. For a while now, we've seen this with the Winnipeg Jets, where they make good moves, but then they don't really fully commit to what they're doing. If they re-sign Kyle Connor to a deal like this, they need to do everything in their power to set themselves up to potentially win in these upcoming years, which would include, if you're someone like me who envisions the Jets taking a bit of a step back this year, it would include getting some of the young talent in there so they can make their mistakes this year to make themselves better for the next years coming. Because this window is closing quicker than people think, unfortunately. I know that we re-signed Velarde. We're going to be re-signing Sandberg, hopefully for long-term soon. But when it comes to players that actually have the most effect on this window, it's Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele, and they are aging every single day, getting older. And this leads me to my concerns about giving Kyle Connor such a big contract. I believe we are entering a new era in the NHL, in the salary cap, where we are going to have teams that are haves and have-nots. And in regards to that, what I mean is teams that are able to spend up to the salary cap and teams that are on an internal cap. I know that in the past, the Winnipeg Jets, among other teams like the Anaheim Ducks, is the one I can always point to, were internal cap teams, which meant, despite the fact that the salary cap was, this much, the Winnipeg Jets were only allowed to spend this much. And that's based on, internal business stuff that is not privy to us in the public. But further to that, if we enter an era, if the Winnipeg Jets can foresee themselves being an internal cap team in the coming years as the salary cap continues to go up, giving a contract that would be market value for Kyle Connor, it would disproportionately affect the Winnipeg Jets more than it would any other team, because, if they're only allowed to spend $100 million when the cap is, 115, then obviously a $12 million deal is worth more is going to take up more space on that roster. And further to that, Kyle Connor is already 29 years old, so he's likely already played through his prime. I think he'll still be able to keep up and put up the numbers he has been putting up. However, the only thing I'd be concerned about is the fact that, with the style of play that he has, he's a pure goal scorer, and he's shifty and speedy. If he loses a step, as he ages, I worry that, the production could eventually dry up. If he gets injured or that's always going to be a concern with giving a long-term deal. But again, when age factors into it, it definitely makes you look at it a little bit differently. Regardless of the positives and negatives of signing Kyle Connor to this extension, I expect this to get done within this offseason. I think the Winnipeg Jets value Kyle Connor very highly, and of course they'll do their best to get that number down to as low as possible, but I expect them to do what it takes to keep Kyle Connor here in Winnipeg. Of course, we all know the stories of how hard it is to get players to play here, yada, yada, yada. We're not going to talk about that. But the thing is, if negotiations do end up taking longer than we expect, if it goes and drags into the middle of the start of the next season, at that point, you might have to consider trading Kyle Connor. And I know that's a scary and difficult conversation for us to have, but the worst thing that could happen to the Winnipeg Jets, cup window that they have going right now would be to lose Kyle Connor in free agency for nothing. That would be the nail in the coffin 100% on this window. So if we get to the point where, Kyle Connor isn't signed, it's December, I don't know. If you're starting to see, he's still stuck in, hey, I want this much money, or I don't want to re-sign here, whatever the case is, the reason that the negotiations haven't been finalized, at that point, you do have to explore a trade. And while that is scary and it is difficult, I think it's actually not the worst thing that the Winnipeg Jets could do. I know that's a bit of a hot take, but I look at a team like the Florida Panthers, who recently, two-time Stanley Cup winner, and they got to an impasse with a free agent who wanted more money than they were willing to give. We, of course, are talking about Jonathan Huberdeau. And now I understand that there are a lot more things that went into this trade for how it, became to be what it is, with, Matthew Tkachuk wanting to play in only a couple different locations. But the point of this is that the Florida Panthers saw a player in Jonathan Huberdeau who just won the Hart Trophy the year prior, had set the record, I believe, for left-handed wingers, with assists in a season, and they traded him along with Mackenzie Weegar, a top defenseman, for a player in Matthew Tkachuk, who was 24 years old at the time, and it, for my money, is one of the best wingers in the league, and very clearly has shown his worth as he's now won 2 cups with the Florida Panthers. I think I look at the re-signing of Kyle Connor to be somewhat similar to, the re-signing of Jonathan Huberdeau. They're at the same age. Jonathan Huberdeau was 29 at the time of the trade. Kyle Connor got Hart votes this year, I believe, and is very clearly a valuable player. So, in my opinion, everyone says, Florida won because, no state tax, this, that, the other thing. I think they do smart business. And this is a great example of seeing a player that they do not want to pay. They think is going to be worth less than he's asking for, and going, okay, let's take this opportunity to identify a player somewhere else in the league who wants a new start. And, I don't expect this to happen, to be very clear. I think the Winnipeg Jets will pay Kyle Connor what he deserves and keep him in Winnipeg for as long as possible, and I would expect him to retire a Jet. But if we get to the point where, we're trying to, elongate this window that we're in, a trade like this could set the Winnipeg Jets up for the future. I know that Kyle Connor would bring in a hefty price tag from other teams. Even as a UFA, the opportunity to re-sign him before anyone else, as well as the opportunity to go on a playoff run with him, would be worth so invaluable to any other team who's looking to contend. The Winnipeg Jets would have a myriad of offers available to them. And so that's why I see this as such a unique situation for the Jets, and one that could potentially dictate the next decade of Winnipeg Jets hockey. So I'm going to end off this video with a question to you guys. I'm going to try and get these going more often in these videos. But if for some reason Kyle Connor refuses to sign with the Winnipeg Jets, who would you target in a trade? And this is going to be our comment question of the day. I'd love for you guys to let me know what you think about the potential of re-signing Kyle Connor. Would you sign him at $12 million? And if it gets to that point, who's someone you would target in a trade to help the Winnipeg Jets continue their window? But regardless, thank you all for watching. Throw a like on this video and have yourself a wonderful summer. I'll be here on Jets Digest breaking it all down for you. Peace.